Hello and welcome to the second lesson of our module on Avestan. Today we are going to look at the Avestan texts and at their use in Zoroastrian religious practice, in ritual in particular. But before we go into this, let's look more closely at the term Avesta. The word Avestan is not an Avestan word, but it comes from Middle Persian Avestan, which is spelled like this in the Pahlavi script. The word is also found in Pasant, which is the spelling of Pahlavi in the fully vocalized Avestan script, and there it is spelled Avestan. This picture here illustrates the way the word Avestan, the Pahlavi word, occurs in the Pahlavi script. We will talk about the Avestan script in the third lesson. The meaning of Avestan is disputed. The two main competing explanations both start from a nominal derivative with the suffix aka, which is in arg, Avestan, from a verbal compound, but attach it to different compounds. According to the first explanation, proposed by Christian Bartholomé, the noun derives from the verb upastu and goes back to upastavaka, praise. Jean Kellens has supported this explanation by pointing out the phraseological combination of the verb upastu with the noun hauma in Yasna 10, which forms part of the hymn to Hauma. According to Kellens, the name denotes the book which begins with the praise of Hauma. The second explanation was put forward by Walter Bruno Henning. He reads the Middle Persian word as abistak, from Old Iranian api-shtaka, admonition. And he interprets it as the injunction of Ormazd. Middle Persian abistak would be, according to Henning, a cognate of Sogdian upstavan, which is spelled upstavan in the Sogdian script, and upstavan like this in the Manichaean script, and there is a morphological parallel for this in Old Persian nishtavan. And according to Henning, abistaka then goes back to the Sogdian word upstavan, then goes back to an earlier api-stavan. Werner Sundermann has further elaborated on this explanation, pointing out that in Christian Sogdian, Pashtavan translates the Syriac ditka, which in turn renders the name of the New Testament, Greek diatheke, disposition, testament. Sundermann suggests that Middle Persian abistak specifically denotes the written Avesta. According to Sundermann, Avestan became the word for the Zoroastrian sacred texts at precisely the time when they were committed to writing in the late Sasanian period. In choosing this word for the written Avesta, Sundermann argues, the Zoroastrians emulated Jews and Christians who perceived of their own scriptures as divine injunctions. The Avesta is by no means a uniform corpus. It includes texts from different periods and of different literary genres. With respect to language, there are two basic divisions. The first consists of texts composed in a more archaic idiom commonly called Old Avestan. The second, usually called Young Avestan, is slightly different dialectally and shows a more advanced stage of linguistic development. In addition, good arguments have recently been put forward for positing a third, Middle Avestan layer, which is between the older and the younger Avesta. The oldest Avestan texts sit right in the middle of the core Zoroastrian ritual, the Yasna, where they occupy chapters 28 to 54 of the text's 72 chapters. They are made up of 17 hymns grouped according to their meter into 5 gathas. The younger Avesta refers to them as the 5 Gathas of Zarathustra and presents Zarathustra as the individual through whom the god Ahura Mazda communicated the Mazda worshipping religion, or Daina Mazda Yasni, to humankind. The Gathas are held in the highest esteem by Zoroastrians up to the present day, and they are frequently quoted in the younger Avestan texts. The first Ahunavaiti Gatha comprises 7 hymns and extends from Yasna 28 to 34. This is here. The second Ushtavaiti Gatha is made up of 4 hymns. The third Spöntamanyu Gatha is made up of equally 4 hymns. Then we have the Vohukshatra Gatha, which consists of 1 hymn only, and the Vahishtoishti Gatha, which also consists of only 1 hymn. At the beginning and at the end of these 5 Gathas are placed 2 holy prayers. One, the Yata Ahuvairyo prayer, the holiest of all the Zoroastrian prayers, sits in Yasna 27:13, and the last one, the Aryaman Ishya prayer, constitutes Yasna 54:1. Of course, these holy prayers are also quoted many, many times in the rest of the Avesta. But it seems here, in this arrangement of the old Avestan texts, we have a sort of a concentric arrangement with the 2 holy prayers at the beginning and at the end, and the Gathas in the middle. You may have noticed that there are gaps in the numbering. The first, biggest gap is from Yasna 35 to 42. And this is the place of the Yasna Haptanghaiti, or the ritual in 7 parts or sections, whose language is also Old Avestan. Its 7 chapters end at Yasna 41, and they are followed by a chapter in Young Avestan, Yasna 42, which praises the Yasna Haptanghaiti. This Young Avestan chapter forms something like a buffer between the end of the Yasna Haptanghaiti and the beginning of the second Gatha, the Ushtavaiti Gatha. And so does the first stanza of the Yasna Haptanghaiti, Yasna 35:1, which is also in Young Avestan, and the Young Avestan chapter Yasna 52, which is recited between the 4th and the 5th Gatha. With regard to language, composition and contents, the Gathas are among the most intricate and dense pieces of literature ever composed. The metrical characteristics of the Gathas is their stichic form. The principle is that each stanza consists of a fixed number of verse lines, and each verse line has a fixed number of syllables. Unlike the Gathas, the Yasna Haptanghaiti is not metrically structured by a fixed number of basically isosyllabic verse lines, but by a variety of rhythmic patterns. Both the rhythmic pattern follows an inherited model of traditional liturgical recitation, for which are parallels in early Latin and Umbrian prayer and liturgy. The Yasna Haptanghaiti provides the compositional model for much of the younger Avestan liturgical compositions in praise of various divine beings. The Old Avestan core of the Yasna is preceded and followed by texts in Younger Avestan, constituting Yasna 27, 1 to 27, and Yasna 55 to 72, respectively. These Young Avestan parts include the praise of Hauma in Yasna 9 to 10, and the hymn to Srausha in Yasna 56 to 57. The entire composition of the 72 chapters is that of several concentric circles with the Yasna Haptang Haiti at its core. The central position of the Yasna Haptang Haiti is illustrated in the diagram here. By putting it somehow in the middle and a bit raised up as the culmination of the ritual. And it is at that point when the Yasna Haptang Haiti is recited that the immolation of the sacrificial animal took place during the Yasna performance. In contemporary ritual practice, the Yasna ceremony is only performed by the Parsis of India, while the know-how was lost amongst the Iranian Zoroastrians some 50 years ago. So the performance of these Zoroastrian rituals, is an endangered heritage. As part of the Multimedia Yasna project, which is funded by the European Research Council and housed at SOAS in the University of London, we undertook to film a full performance of the Yasna ritual, not only in order to preserve this endangered heritage, to document it, but also to make it available for scholarly study. We filmed the ritual in November 2017 in the Dada Aturnan Institute in Mumbai. And we were supported in this by the director of the Aturnan Institute, Dr. Ramia Karanjia, and we had two of the best ritual priests who had agreed to perform the ritual for us. It was a staged ritual conducted on the premises of the school where the young aspiring priests learn how to perform this ritual and other rituals. I'm going to show you now a very short extract from the film which we made just to give you an idea of what such a ritual performance looks like today and might have looked like earlier. Of course, there is never any guarantee that no changes have been introduced. It's very likely that they have been introduced, but it just gives you an idea of what a performance looks like. You will see the scene of the recitation of Yasna 34:4 to 7. That is from the last hymn of the first Gatha. I hope you enjoyed watching this. The whole film is about 3 hours, and as you could see, the priests recite at an enormous speed, and it's very difficult to make out individual words. For that reason, we are going to provide subtitles of the recitation texts of the words so that you can actually read the words, the Avestan words which the priests recite while watching the film in slow movement. And we are also going to provide a translation so that you can read the translation as well as the words which the priests recite while watching the film. We are also going to create a multimedia application which is going to give interactive features, providing the viewer with explanations of ritual implements used by the priests, and you can request for the explanations by clicking on an item. You have it illustrated on this slide here. So this is here the recitation text in Avestan, and that's going to be provided with a translation, and the viewer can manipulate the way the film is going to be watched. There will also be then the possibility of clicking on items here. For example, one can click on the Barisman tricks which the priests use here in the ritual, and then a window opens providing an explanation of what these tricks are for in the ritual. The same ritual was also filmed a second time with a spherical camera. Here, this one, a ball, and which carries 6 cameras dotted around it, 4 at the circumference, 1 at the top and 1 at the bottom. And everybody had to leave the room. The priests performed the ritual, which took only 2.5 hours instead of 3 or 4 hours. And they just ran through the ritual non-stop. And this ritual was filmed with these spherical camera producing 6 films which are going to be stitched together and then produce a film in virtual reality. That means you can watch the film in 360 degrees. So in order to watch it, one needs to wear these special goggles, which our chief priest, our Zod Adil Pesania, wears here, and he is enjoying the film, watching himself in virtual reality. And this gentleman here is our collaborator, Dr. Ramya Karanjia, the director of the priestly school where we made the film. So the film in virtual reality then provides a 360-degree view of the ritual performance. And here, while wearing the goggles, the viewer can look up, can look down, can look around, can look into the pots which the priests use here on the ritual table here. And you can watch the fire, you can watch the 2 priests simultaneously, see what the other priests do while certain ritual actions are being performed, and get a full view of the ritual. And here potentially we have an enormous source of information on detail of the ritual performance, and we are hoping to use all of this in our text editions of the Yasna ritual, which we are also preparing. Like Vedic ritual, Zoroastrian ritual is an act of hospitality offered to the gods. The key person of the ritual is the host, usually a member of the laity. He or she hires the ritual expert, that is, the priest, to perform the ritual on his or her behalf. Thus, these people, these members of the laity, become the patron of the ritual, the yajamana in Vedic. The merit for performing the ritual goes on the account of the patron. The priest, usually several of them, these ones here, they perform the ritual. They perform the ritual which is offered to the divine being, as indicated by the arrows here. The divine beings in turn are invited to come to the ritual precinct to enjoy the offerings. Here they come down to the ritual precinct, enjoy the offerings, and bestow great gifts of hospitality on the patron, this one here, who has hired the priest to perform the ritual. And then they return to their heavenly abode after the ritual has been performed. The fire plays a central role during the ritual. Here there is the fire, of course, blazing during the ritual. It is the medium between the divine and the human worlds. And it's a go-between between these two worlds. Then at the end of the ritual, the patron is obliged to pay the priest. That's absolutely essential. And the priest should be remunerated generously and immediately. And only after this sacrificial gift has been made, the ritual is complete, otherwise not. the principle of elaborating and on and inserting texts into existing composition not only produced our extant 72 chapter yasna, but also longer rituals, all of which are ultimately based on the yasna. These are the Vízperet ceremony, the Videvdat ceremony, and the Vistaspiash ceremonies. Now, the name Vízperet results from the univerbation of the Avestan word Vízpe Ratavo, which means something like all ratus. We can't really translate this word ratu well. It's almost impossible to translate, just like the word asha. Solemn, it is the name of a more solemn ceremony celebrated at the 6 seasonal festivals of the Zoroastrians, the Gahambars. While the text of the yasna is occasionally substituted with other words, the Vízperet is characterized by additional text passages which are inserted at certain points into the yasna. Many of these passages elaborate on preceding sections of the yasna, so the Vízperet in some ways is closely linked to the text of the yasna. And these additional passages thus make the yasna longer and more solemn. Most of the sections of the Vízperet are inserted into the Stauta Yesnia of the yasna. These are yasna 14 to 58. That means they are the central portion of the yasna. This arrangement may be as old as the Avesta itself, because it is referred to in one of the younger Avestan hymns, the Mihir Yasht. Thus we read in Yasht 10, 122, "Let no one drink from these libations unless he is apt at reciting the Vízpe Ratavo of the Stauta Yesnia." So here we are. We have it already in the Avesta. The substitutions of text passages in the different ceremonies is illustrated here with the sections which name the watch in which the respective ceremonies start. This section here. So all of these sections have number 8, and you can see how there are lexical differences between these two, across the different ceremonies. And here as well, this belongs part of the day watches, the gars, and the formulae are different in the different gars. And the Videvdat ceremony starts in the Ushahin gar, which is at midnight, and whereas the Yasna ceremony starts in the Havan gar, and so does the Vízperet ceremony, and therefore different gars are mentioned in this first section. The Videvdat and the Vistaspiash ceremonies are both based on the Vízperet ceremony. So that is on this section, on this ceremony here. The Vízperet in turn, of course, as we have seen, is a yasna ceremony expanded with special texts to make the yasna ceremony more solemn. So the Videvdat and the Vistaspiash ceremony, which is added here, are based on the more solemn variety of the yasna ceremony. Now, beginning just before yasna 28, which is here, and ending just before yasna 55, which is here, pairs of the 22 sections of the Videvdat and individual and the 8 sections of the Vistaspiash are inserted into the text of the Vízperet at fixed points in between the chapters of the Old Avestan text. So here it's this kernel of the yasna or Vízperet ceremony, which is further expanded by the insertion of chapters of the Videvdat, of Fargads of the Videvdat, and of the Vistaspiash. As mentioned already, the Videvdat ceremony starts at midnight. A Apart from these ceremonies, there must have been other intercalation ceremonies, but unfortunately these ceremonies are lost today. One of these ceremonies seems to have been the Bayanyasan, this one here. In this ceremony, it were the yashts which were intercalated into the Vispirit, and we can here grasp at least one of the ritual functions of the yashts. The yashts are a collection of 21 hymns devoted to a wide, though quite heterogeneous range of divinities worshipped by Zoroastrians. Now, who are these deities? Well, some of them have cognates in the Vedic pantheon and can be traced back to Indo-Iranian, such as, for example, Hauma, the sacrificial plant, which of course has its equivalent in Vedic Soma. Then we have Mithra, the god contract, which corresponds to Vedic Mitra, and Virathragna, which is victory, literally breaking resistance. And here we have the Vedic concept of Rutrahan, breaking resistance, who is the dragon slayer. The names, though, not necessarily the figures of others deities worshipped in the yashts, are specifically Iranian, and to these belong the goddess Aradvisura Anahita, to whom Yasht 5 is dedicated, the goddess Druvaspa, and also the glory, or the Khvarana, to whom two yashts are dedicated, Yasht 18 and Yasht 19. Other divine beings personify Zoroastrian religious concepts, and these include the Fravashis, choice, Ashi, Wanghi, good reward, Srausha, attentiveness, Chista, insight, and Ashi, Wanghi, good reward, and also the Arashnu, judgment. The first four yashts are a collection of the whole collection are devoted to Ahura Mazda, which is Yasht 1, to the Amisha Spintas, Yasht 2, and there are special hymns dedicated to Asha, Yasht 3, and Haurvatad, Yasht 4. So you can see that here we have the four yashts at the beginning of the collection dedicated to these very Zoroastrian divinities. In the extant Avestan manuscripts, the yashts have been transmitted as part of the Kordi, or the Little Avesta, which includes a range of different texts in Avestan and in Pahlavi, recited in lay and priestly rituals, and testifying to the wide range of different and complex rituals that must once have been practiced. These texts include the Niyayishins, or praises, Afrinagan, or blessings, Siroza, or the formulae for each of the month's 30 days, the Gas, which are the texts recited in the 5 watches of the Zoroastrian 24-hour day, the Patets, or penitentiary prayers, Nirangs, or purification rites, and many other prayers. The manuscripts of the Horde Avesta may include all the yashts, such as the manuscript E1, or just a selection of them. The only exception is the Codex F1, which dates from 1591, and this codex provides the text of all the yashts of the Niyayishin without any of the other text characteristic of the Kordi Avesta. And this Codex F1 is in fact the oldest and most important witness for the yashts. Apart from the liturgical and the devotional texts of the Avesta, there are also small collections of non-liturgical Avestan literature. It includes the ritual text Herbedistan, which means something like precepts for priests, talks about the training of priests, and the Nirangistan, which may be translated as ritual precepts, which chiefly deals with how the rituals should be performed. These two texts discuss questions pertaining to religious instruction of both priests and members of the laity, and also to ritual matters. Please join us for our third lesson, in which we shall talk about the transmission of the Avesta.